Welcome to Being at Home with George. I'm excited to be here, and let's begin the way we always begin, by saying yes to whatever comes up, saying yes to life, embracing it. And we have this idea of creating the possibility of generating hope and making wise choices. And so it's interesting because sometimes I encounter things and the choice is not so obvious. Sometimes it requires more waiting, more patience. And so when I think about this and I think about the time we're in and the fact that we haven't done one of these in a while, I think it's important to remind myself that I have a masterpiece. I am wired for success. Sometimes I refer to that as Buddha nature or Christ consciousness or the divine spark. But in essence, we have this ability to direct attention. William James said, volitional effort is the effort of attention. In other words, we have free will, we have autonomy, and we can decide what thoughts we want to focus on, what thoughts we want to hold in mind, what thoughts we want to have. And it's an ability we have, and we have to exercise it. If we don't exercise it, we lose it. And so this idea of directing attention to certain thoughts. And for me, what I think is helpful is this idea of developing an ability to actually experience stability and being in the moment. So this idea of concentration or directing attention to one thing in a way where the mind gets into a calm state or gets stable is really, really important. And one of the things I was thinking about is the practice of gratitude. And we've talked about gratitude in the past. This idea that gratitude, a grateful mind is a great mind that attracts great things to it. So a concentration practice of just reflecting on 3 new things to be grateful for each day. And so for me, the idea that we can breathe in and breathe out is something to be grateful for, that we have this human experience and we have the ability to choose, even when there's situations where it doesn't feel like there's not much space, like a thin sheet of paper, that we can always create space between stimulus and response and then exercise choice. And the choice to have free will, this is what William James was talking about when there's this idea of this free will, there's no free will. And he says, well, I choose to use my free will to decide that I have free will. And so this idea of self-determination, this idea of we become what we think about, and our thoughts have this ability to direct attention to it. So when I direct attention to the fact that I'm grateful that I have the non-toothache, I'm grateful that I have the non-shingles, trigeminal pain, I'm grateful that right now I'm in a place where I have heat and lights and I can eat and I can walk. If I have to go to the bathroom, I can go to the bathroom in peace. If I decide not to do something, I can decide that. But the main thing is decide that there's more right with me than what's wrong with me, that I have this ability, no matter what happens to me, to choose my response and not to lose my core values of being at joy, being at peace, seeking to understand rather than to be understood, to understand that I am connected to the things beyond myself, that I and the other are one. And my idea of stability has to do with how can I be a mature, rational, productive person? And without goodwill, without compassion and empathy, without understanding how things work, seeking to understand, then to be understood. And this idea of how do we deal with discomfort? And the interesting thing I've developed is sometimes I don't know that it's discomfort there until I watch my behavior of aversion, moving away from something. And then that tells me that there's something there that I might want to look at. And I'll give you an example. The more I think about getting comfortable, being uncomfortable, there's this idea that if you're comfortable, everything's fine. But I realize that sometimes when I feel really comfortable, like I mean extremely comfortable, like I did last week, there's a discomfort with the comfort because on some level I know it's not going to last. And so just seeing that was a revelation for me. But even if we don't talk about things in terms of comfort and discomfort, just observing my experience, my reactions to life, it's in alignment with the idea if it's uncomfortable, I'm going to have aversion or I'm going to move away from it or be hesitant to embrace it. And so if it's pleasant, it's going to say more, I want more. And so if you think about the process we've been engaged in for 5 years, we've been talking about this idea of saying yes to everything. to embracing it. And when we say that, we didn't say it's going to be easy, but the idea is the freedom that comes from saying yes to everything, even the discomfort, that on the other side of that is growth and confidence. And we develop resilience. We develop what we call a strong self-efficacy belief, which means that we can't control what happens to us, but we can control our response to it. We can choose. Even Viktor Frankl said that when we find meaning in suffering, it ceases to be suffering. And what he calls ultimate freedom is that when something really bad or difficult or painful happens to us, we can choose our response. And so this idea of volitional effort is the effort of attention. I say choose life. I say yes to life, generate the hope, and make a choice that's in alignment with me being a mature, productive, rational adult.